The world before the Crusades. Imagine Europe in the year 1095. There were no modern nations, no borders drawn on maps, no unified European army. Instead, the continent was divided between kings, dukes, counts, bishops, knights, and thousands of smaller feudal territories. Power belonged to those who could control land, and land meant everything. It provided food, taxes, soldiers, and political influence. But far to the east, beyond the Mediterranean, another world was developing. Constantinople stood at the center of it. The city was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the surviving eastern half of the Roman world. Its walls had protected it for centuries, while its markets connected Europe with Asia. To many Western Europeans, Constantinople was almost unimaginably wealthy. Its churches were decorated with gold. Its markets were filled with silk, spices, precious stones, and goods arriving from distant lands. But behind those magnificent walls, the Byzantine Empire was struggling. Its territory had been shrinking for generations. The old Roman Empire had once stretched across much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Now only fragments remained, and one of the greatest threats came from a people who had moved west from Central Asia. The Seljuk Turks, originally nomadic warriors. The Seljuks had adopted Sunni Islam and rapidly built a powerful empire. Their armies moved across Persia and into the lands surrounding the Byzantine Empire. In 1071, the Byzantine Emperor Romanos of Diogenes confronted the Seljuk ruler Alp Arslan near Manzikert. The battle became a catastrophe for Byzantium. The Byzantine army was defeated, the emperor himself was captured, and the consequences were enormous. Anatolia, the heartland of the Byzantine Empire, suddenly became vulnerable. Over the following decades, Turkish settlement transformed the region. The Byzantines were not destroyed immediately, but the balance of power had changed. And eventually Emperor Alexios I Komnenos faced a terrifying possibility. Constantinople itself could become the next target. So Alexios turned west. He asked the Christian rulers of Western Europe for military assistance. But there was a complication. The Christian world was already divided. In 1054, the Great Schism had separated the Roman Catholic Church in the West from the Eastern Orthodox Church. They shared many beliefs, but they disagreed over authority, theology, and the leadership of Christianity. And yet, when Alexios appealed for help, the possibility of cooperation emerged. In 1095, Pope Urban I gathered churchmen and nobles at Clermont in France. There, the march to Jerusalem by late 1096 and early 1097. The major crusading armies had reached Constantinople. The city must have seemed almost unreal to them. For many Western Europeans, Constantinople was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its walls stretched for miles. Its harbor was crowded with ships. Its streets were filled with merchants speaking different languages. Its churches contained treasures accumulated over centuries. The Crusaders were impressed, but Emperor Alexios Komnenos was not simply welcoming them as friends. He understood the danger. These Western armies were enormous, and their leaders had their own ambitions. Alexios demanded oaths from the Crusader commanders. They were expected to return former Byzantine territories captured from the Turks. The Crusaders reluctantly agreed. Then the armies crossed into Anatolia. Their first major objective was Nicaea. The city was strategically important and heavily defended. The Crusaders surrounded it, but something strange happened. Byzantine ships arrived on Lake Snake, cutting off the city's access to supplies. Eventually, the defenders negotiated with the emperor. Nicaea surrendered to Byzantium. The Crusaders were furious. They had expected to enter the city themselves. Instead, Byzantine troops took control. It was an early warning that the alliance between Byzantium and the Crusaders would never be completely comfortable. The armies continued east. They crossed dry plains and mountainous terrain. Heat became a deadly enemy. Water was often more valuable than gold. Horses collapsed. Men died from exhaustion. And the Crusaders soon discovered that the Middle East was not a battlefield designed for European heavy cavalry. The Seljuks used mobility. They attacked from a distance. They retreated, then returned. Their armies could disappear into the landscape and strike again hours later. At Dorylaeum, the Crusaders were nearly overwhelmed, but the arrival of reinforcements saved them. The road to the Holy Land remained open. Eventually, the army reached Antioch, and there the campaign became a nightmare. Antioch was one of the greatest cities of the region. Its walls were enormous. Its defenders had enough supplies to survive for months. The Crusaders therefore began a siege, and the siege lasted 7 months. 7 months of hunger, disease, cold, desertion, and desperation. Some crusaders reportedly ate animals that normally would never have been considered food. Others abandoned the army completely. Then, in June 1098, a breakthrough came. A local defender named Firuz made contact with the Crusaders. He allegedly offered to help them enter the city. The plan worked. A ladder was lowered. Crusaders climbed the walls. The gates were opened. Antioch fell, but victory immediately became another crisis. A large Muslim relief army was approaching. The Crusaders were now trapped inside the city they had just conquered. Their situation appeared hopeless. Then came one of the most famous legends of the First Crusade. A priest named Peter Bartholomew claimed that he had discovered the Holy Lance. According to him, the spear that had pierced the side of Christ had been buried beneath a church in Antioch. The discovery inspired the starving army. Whether the object was genuine is another question. Modern historian, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Crusaders had won Jerusalem. But winning a city was very different from defending an entire kingdom. The newly created Crusader States were scattered across the eastern Mediterranean. There was the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Edessa. Together they formed a fragile collection of territories often referred to as Outremer. The land overseas. The problem was geography. The Crusader States were surrounded by larger Muslim powers. They depended heavily on reinforcements from Europe. But Europe was thousands of kilometers away. The Mediterranean became their lifeline. Ships carried soldiers, weapons, horses, food, and money. And this gave enormous power to the Italian maritime republics. Venice, Genoa, Pisa. Their merchants understood something the knights often did not. Wars could create enormous commercial opportunities. Italian merchants received trading privileges in Crusader ports. They established their own quarters. They controlled warehouses. They transported luxury goods, and they helped connect the Crusader states to European markets. The Crusades were therefore not simply a religious conflict. They were also a commercial revolution. Silk, spices, sugar, dyes, glass, perfumes, and other products traveled between worlds, and knowledge traveled with them. European scholars encountered ideas from Islamic civilization in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and engineering. This is one of the great paradoxes of the Crusades. The war created hatred, but contact between civilizations also increased. Meanwhile, the Crusaders needed soldiers, and two institutions became famous: the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller. The Templars began as a small group of warriors protecting pilgrims, but they eventually became an international organization. They owned land, they operated castles, they received donations, and they developed sophisticated financial networks. A traveler could deposit money in one location and withdraw it in another. In some ways, the Templars performed functions that resemble early international banking. The Hospitallers had a different origin. They began as a charitable institution caring for sick pilgrims. Eventually, they became a powerful military order. Their castles guarded important frontier routes. One of the most spectacular was Crac des Chevaliers. The fortress was built and expanded over generations. Its walls, towers, and defensive systems reflected the military technology of the period. But even the strongest castle could not solve the fundamental problem. The Crusader states were surrounded, and their enemies were learning. In 1144, the county of Edessa fell to Zengi, ruler of Mosul and Aleppo. The loss shocked Europe. It was the first major Crusader state to disappear. The response was the Second Crusade. This time, European kings themselves joined the expedition. King Louis V of France and Emperor Conrad I of Germany. Their armies traveled east, but the campaign quickly went wrong. The German army suffered devastating losses in Anatolia. The French army followed. Then the Crusaders attempted to capture Damascus. It was a disastrous decision. The city was defended by Muslim forces that were not necessarily united against the Crusaders. Instead of dividing their enemies, the Crusaders encouraged them to cooperate. The siege collapsed. The Second Crusade ended in failure. And something even more important was happening in the Muslim world. A new leader was rising. His name was Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub. Saladin. He was Kurdish by origin. He was not born as the legendary ruler later portrayed by European literature. His rise was gradual. He served under powerful leaders. He gained political experience. He eventually became ruler of Egypt. Then he expanded into Syria. By the 1180s, Saladin had created something the Crusaders had feared for generations: a relatively united Muslim political power surrounding the Crusader states. But Saladin understood that simply attacking Jerusalem would not be enough. He needed to destroy the military strength of the Crusaders first, and in 1187 he found his opportunity. The confrontation would take place near the Horns of Hattin, and it would change the history of the Holy Land forever.